being dynamic as a speaker is not about being loud and in your face like this. That seems hyperbolic, but it's a mistake that I see so many speakers making. I see so many copycat Tony Robbins out there. Tony Robbins is a dynamic speaker because he's tall, because he has a lot of activity in his seminars. He plays music, he gets people clapping and dancing, he gets them shouting out affirmations. That's one way of being dynamic as a speaker. That's one way of being direct and engaging and getting your message through to people. It's not the only way. And I see too many speakers who are just trying to be the next Tony Robbins, and there is no point trying to be the next Tony Robbins. We already have Tony Robbins. We need the next you. We need you bringing your unique blend and style as a speaker. That's what we want to hear. And if all you do is the affirmations and the dancing and the music, you're wasting so many opportunities and you're underutilizing so many different techniques that you can use to get your message home to your audience. Because you know who else is an impactful speaker? The Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama doesn't use music, doesn't use affirmations, doesn't use dancing. In fact, all he does is walk into a room. When the Dalai Lama walks into a room, he doesn't have to say anything, he doesn't have to do anything, but everyone is silent, engaged, and listening to every word he says. There's more than one way to do it, folks. And that's what I'm going to share for you in this video today. We're going to look at some techniques that you can use to be more dynamic as a speaker. By all means, be able to bring that energy, bring that enthusiasm, show that you're passionate about what you speak about, but you don't have to do it in an overhyped, copycat manner and thinking that there's only one way in which to do it. There are many strings to your bow. Let's pluck a few of them. One of the most dynamic speakers that I've had the pleasure to work with is one of my clients, Sarah. When Sarah first came to me, she actually didn't tell me what she wanted to speak about. I remember her first speech, and I say remember, I remember her doing it, but I can't remember what she said. Because actually it wasn't her message. After she did her first speech that I saw, she actually did a follow-up speech and said, you know what? I wasn't speaking about what I really wanted to speak about. I want to speak about living with bipolar. I want to speak about a message of mental health, of recovery, of resilience, of getting through the challenges in life. And as soon as I saw that second speech, I knew there was something special about her. I knew that there was this strength, this perseverance, this resilience that was just going to ooze through her as a speaker and really change people's lives. But at that time, she wasn't an effective speaker. She had never done any real formal public speaking training beyond the little bit that you do throughout state education. What we had to do with Sarah was develop some of the techniques that would allow her to share her amazing story, her powerful experiences in a way that would connect with the audience. There are many people out there, just like Sarah, who have these brilliant stories and really powerful messages that should be heard, but until they start to build in the technique of how to do it, they're never really going to have the impact that they desire. So over the course of a month, that's exactly what we worked on together. And Sarah was a brilliant student. She was just like a sponge. Everything that I suggested to her, she soaked it in, she worked on it, she changed it, she improved it. And after about 8 months of working together, Sarah did a live video on Facebook about suicide, about her experiences of considering and attempting suicide, a message to other people who were in that same position that she was. It got over 1,000 views. It was shared about 20 odd times. It was her first viral video. And the story was the same. She'd had that story 8 months ago. But what we had done in the meantime was build up some of the technique, bring in some of the foundations of effective speaking that allowed her to tell that story and share that message in a much more impactful way, which would encourage people to listen to it, to take it on, and certainly to share it with the world, to be an ambassador for Sarah's message. And that's what good speaking allows you to do. It allows you to inspire people not just to change their lives, but also to tell other people about how you could change their lives. There were 3 things in particular that really stood out in terms of what made the difference for Sarah over the course of these 8 months or so. And that's what I'm going to share with you in this video today. The 3 things that we changed with Sarah that made a massive difference to how dynamic and how impactful she ultimately was as a speaker. The first thing Sarah and I worked on was cutting out her filler words and crutch phrases. What are filler words and crutch phrases? These are those little hesitations, those little random words that just slip into our speaking, and they don't do anything, they don't mean anything. They often come about because we're a little bit nervous or we're unsure of what we're saying, or we're just a little bit lazy in the way that we speak sometimes as well. And this comes through a lot in everyday conversation. And actually, I wouldn't say that it's a bad thing coming up in conversation. The way that we speak in conversation, it's a lot more, I guess, rambling. It's a lot more making things up as you go along, being inventive, about to say one thing and then you realize you're going to say something else and moving on. So the way that we speak in conversation is a little bit different to how we speak on stage. But definitely on stage, if you start to bring in some of these conversational tics and habits into your speaking, it's going to dilute the effectiveness of your message. I'll give you an example. Meditation is a keystone habit. It takes so little time to do, and it has so many positive effects. Compare that to meditation is what we call a keystone habit. It doesn't take like that much time to do, but you know, it has a lot of good effects. What version of that statement was more impactful? What version of that statement made you consider meditation as a viable option more? The first one, right? That second version had these filler words and crutch phrases in there. Your fillers are your ums, as, those little moments of hesitation, sometimes because we're thinking, sometimes because we're nervous. Then you also have the crutch phrases coming through. Things like actually, obviously, so, you know, and. It's not that those words don't have meaning by themselves. Like is another one. I can't believe I forgot like. Funnily enough, in everyday conversation, like comes up for me quite a lot. But when you see me speaking, do you ever hear me just throwing likes through a sentence? I certainly hope not. That's the difference. These crutch phrases have meanings by themselves. If I say something like, the chair was like a rock to sit on. Like is an appropriate word to use there because I'm making that comparison. But if I say meditation is like an easy habit to do, that word has no meaning there. And these interruptions of the filler words and the crutch phrases interrupt the fluency of what you're saying and ultimately impact the power of what you're saying. And Sarah at the beginning, bless her, had quite a few of these. But she worked really hard to be aware of these, and instead of having a little hesitation, she would just pause. If she's thinking of her next point, she'd pause to allow her time to think. If she was feeling a little bit nervous, she would just take that time to compose herself before going on to say something new. Especially given the emotional and raw nature of some of the experiences that she was sharing. And by taking out all of these fillers. It automatically made her speech more fluid, it made it more direct, it made it more dynamic. And we didn't actually do anything different. We didn't add anything to her speaking. We actually took something away from her speaking. And through that process of elimination, we actually made an addition. It automatically made what she was saying that more impactful, and she hadn't done anything new. The second thing I worked on with Sarah was developing contrast in her speaking. And this is the key mistake that people make when they're trying to be dynamic, when they're trying to be impactful, is they just go high energy. And the problem with high energy is that high energy doesn't work if you don't have low energy as well. You can't sprint a marathon. If you just stay high energy all the time, it actually gets quite abrasive and quite difficult to listen to. I remember being in a Toastmasters competition, and an international competition. So bear in mind the speakers at this level are supposed to be pretty good. And there was one contestant in one of the other contests. I wasn't in this contest, but I was watching it. And he spent his entire 7-minute speech shouting. I mean, like actually shouting. He delivered the whole speech like this. And it was such a shame because someone had clearly told him, look, you need to demonstrate the emotions a little bit more. You need to have a bit more energy to your speaking. And he just went way too far the other direction. And it was really horrible to listen to. And it's not that he was a horrible speaker, and it's not that he had a horrible speech. He was just using a faulty technique of being high energy all the time. And do you remember I was talking earlier about how people try and be Tony Robbins and they're just like music and affirmations and loud stuff? It doesn't work if that's all you do. You can't sprint a marathon. You can't even sprint 800 meters. You need to vary that up. And that's what contrast is all about. If you underline everything, nothing is underlined. For the high energy to work, you've got to have the low energy. For the high speed to work, you've got to have the lower speeds. For the high pitches to work, you've got to have the low pitches. Developing contrast actually makes both aspects of your speaking more effective. If you just stay low and slow, it gets boring and monotonous to listen to. If you just speak high and fast all the time, it's really irritating and abrasive and in your face. Being able to bounce between the two will make you more dynamic as a speaker, because it will highlight when you're raising the energy, when you're adding the emphasis. That will draw your audience's attention to the key points of a story, to the key aspects of your message. And particularly for Sarah speaking, this worked really well because her life is about contrast. She lives with bipolar. She has the ups and the downs. She can explain that better than anyone. And her speaking was so impactful because she could bounce between the two so effectively. She could be talking about misusing drugs in one sentence and making a joke about suicide attempts in the next sentence. Like, really, the way that she could pull it off was astonishing. She could bounce from one end of the spectrum to the other, and that contrast really hit hard. When you hear a joke about a suicide attempt, it makes you sit back and go, wait, what? What's going on here? It really sits with you and stays with you. And I'm not saying that you have to have that extremity of contrast. Sarah is just particularly good at it, and she has, let's face it, a little bit of skin in the game in having those experiences and being able to joke about them or talk about them in a different light and a different perspective. For your speaking, it doesn't have to go nearly that far. Just those little variations in the pace and the voice brings in that contrast. Just a little bit of variation in the tempo and the volume brings those levels of contrast. Little changes in the story of focusing more on some struggle and challenge makes the achievement and the accomplishment that much greater, and it has the audience cheering for you that much more. If you want to be more dynamic as a speaker, you need to speak across the spectrum. You need to have the low energy and the high energy, the struggle and the accomplishment. If you're able to blend between the two, people are going to remember you more and people are going to be more influenced by your message than if you just try to stay at one side all of the time when you're speaking. The third tip that I gave Sarah was probably the simplest. After months of working together, I noticed one thing. Bearing in mind, this is the virtual speaking reality of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I was watching Sarah delivering her speeches through her camera on her laptop. And I realized that month after month, Sarah was delivering her speeches sitting down. And I noticed that she had a lot of energy and a lot of dynamism as a speaker sitting down. But ultimately, what I recognized was that sitting down was probably constricting her and restraining her. And when I saw that her strength was having that high energy, having that positivity, having a lot of dynamism in the way that she moved and the way that she talked, I made one suggestion. Sarah, for your next speech, I want you to try standing up. I think it will add a little bit more poise and power to how you're delivering as a speaker. She stood up for her speech the following month, and I said, Sarah, I'm really sorry. You're never going to be able to sit down to do a speech again. The difference in the energy and the tempo just through you standing up was so profound, so pronounced. And this was from someone who I consider to be a high energy speaker already. And just through the fact of standing up, she started moving around the space. She got more immersed in the stories that she was telling. She got more direct and dynamic with her messaging and her points. She couldn't go back to the way that she was. So I said, from now on, Sarah, you're standing up to deliver your speeches. And the next speech she did after that was the message about suicide. The video that got over 1,000 views and was shared 20 odd times. And I didn't expect to be proven right that quickly, but it just goes to show that simple changes to how you deliver as a speaker can have profound impacts. Sarah had been putting a lot of other pieces into play of her speaking leading into that video, and I'm certainly not suggesting that standing up was the magic pill that suddenly changed everything, but it made a big shift in allowing her to express more of what we'd been working on up until that point. And when we're in this realm of virtual speaking right now in the COVID pandemic, but also in all the times that are going to be after, don't think virtual speaking is going away, that the cat is out the bag. There's going to be so many times that you're speaking on camera to people in a different part of the world than you ever were before. And if you want to be dynamic and direct with them, you've got to be standing up. There's advantages to sitting down and there's advantages to standing up. It's not that one's better than the other, but if you've got a talk that has some stakes, that has something on the line, perhaps you're doing a sales presentation or perhaps you're doing a TEDx talk virtually as opposed to in person. If you've got something that has a real outcome linked in with that speech directly, you've got to be standing up for it. You've got to give yourself that power and that presence to communicate your message more effectively. It's a simple tweak, but it really, really works. And it will make you stand out from all the people who are sitting down. All the people working from home who are on their Zooms, on their Microsoft Teams, and they're just sitting at their office all day, reading through the PowerPoint slides, one bullet point after the other. Can you imagine what breath of fresh air you're going to be when suddenly you come into the room and you're not speaking off the slides and you're standing up to speak? People are going to go, whoa, where did they come from? And you haven't done anything different. You're not speaking about a different topic. You're not necessarily a different person or a more accomplished speaker. You're just delivering in a different way. And it's these types of tweaks that make the big difference down the line. So if you're someone who's wanted to be more dynamic as a speaker, you wanted to be more expressive, you want to get your message out there into the world, if you want to be creating viral videos like the one that Sarah did, then you've got to have these techniques coming into play. That's going to make you more dynamic, it's going to make you more engaging, it's going to make you more memorable. Don't copy someone else's speaking style. Don't try and be the Tony Robbins, because guess what? He's already got the space out there. He's already got his viral videos. If you try and copy him, people are just going to watch and say, that's someone trying to be Tony Robbins but not as good. I'm just going to go and watch Tony Robbins instead. You don't want that. We want you as a speaker. Absolutely, there's common techniques that all effective speakers use, but it's all about learning how to do them in your particular way, bringing out your particular style, allowing you to shine as you are. Shine as you are as a speaker. That's what speaking is all about. The world has everyone else. Now, it needs you.